There likely is no God. Here's why. How about the case of animal suffering, right? Animals typically don't have free will in most Christians' eyes. So why is it the case that animals go through so much gratuitous suffering in the wild? Now, some responses to this is, well, don't worry, Mike, in the end, God has a plan for those animals, and eventually they'll get to heaven, and that evil will be defeated. But why should we believe that? Now you're just adding more commitments to your theory. And the idea that, we have to go through some horrors today for the future compensation that might one day happen. Well, I think this is absurd. I think there are some horrors, some things that are so cruel that no promise of future compensation could actually justify that action. Not even the promise of heaven could justify some of the atrocities that we see.
Here he hits on William Rowe's argument from gratuitous suffering. Rowe is known for bringing up the example of a fawn in the woods. And he said this: suppose in some distant forest, lightning strikes a dead tree, resulting in a forest fire. In the fire, a fawn is trapped, horribly burned, and lies in terrible agony for several days before death relieves its suffering. So far as we can see, the fawn's intense suffering is pointless. Could an omnipotent, omniscient being have prevented the fawn's apparently pointless suffering? Now, Mr. Burgandy may not be able to see how any promises could possibly justify such suffering, but that's exactly his problem. The moment he admits he can't see it, he's admitting his objection isn't really a logical one. Instead, he's setting up himself and his perceptive abilities as the be-all and end-all of what the rest of us should conclude. Rowe did the same thing when he said, no good state of affairs we know of is such that an omnipotent, omniscient being's obtaining it would morally justify that being's permitting this type of suffering. Both men are making limited human perception the ultimate standard, but that's illogical. Here's why. The main problem with Rowe's argument is right there in his explanation of it. He says there's no reason God needed to allow evil in order to bring about any good we know about. What about goods we don't know about? Did Rowe consider them? Stephen Wykstra has coined the term condition of reasonable epistemic access, or cornea for short, to explain the impact our lack of knowledge has upon our ability to draw reasonable conclusions. Imagine you walk into a dog park, look around, and declare that there's not one single hippopotamus anywhere in that park. I'm borrowing this example from Gregory Gansley and Yina Lee, by the way. Now, that would be a perfectly reasonable thing for you to do, because if there was a hippopotamus in the park, it's safe to assume you would notice it. Now, however, suppose you say that there aren't any dog whistles in the park solely because you don't hear any. Dog whistles blow at a frequency too high to be heard by human ears. Even if there had been dog whistles, you wouldn't necessarily know about it. According to cornea, you're justified in concluding there aren't any hippopotami, but not that there aren't any dog whistles. Makes sense, right? Now, take a look back at Rowe's argument. If God had sufficient reasons for allowing these instances of seemingly gratuitous suffering, would we humans be in a position to know? The answer is no. In fact, Rowe essentially concedes that point. After he gives his whole fawn in the woods example, he admits it would seem to require something like omniscience on our part before we could lay claim to knowing that there is no greater good connected to the fawn's suffering. Yes, exactly. God's omniscient, we're not. In other words, finite, limited beings like us could never know if an all-knowing, omniscient being such as God had a sufficient reason for allowing suffering. We're not omniscient, so our base of knowledge will always be lower than God's. Rowe's admission actually defeated his entire argument. Because we're not omniscient, we're in no position to know if God has sufficient reasons for allowing suffering like that experienced by the fawn. We're no better off than the person in the park who is unable to hear any dog whistles. We wouldn't expect to have this knowledge, so it's hardly surprising that we don't see something which we wouldn't expect to see in the first place.